Here at Johnny and Friends, we receive thousands of emails, letters, phone calls every year, hearing about the stories of families affected by disabilities and their experience in church life. Well, today in this video, we are going to hear from the Siebels family, and we're going to hear about their story. Now, sometimes stories are amazing about how churches have ministered to these families, and sometimes the stories are disappointing about rejection and not being accepted. Well, listen to the Siebels and let's hear what their experience was.
I want to first thank you, Tom and Blanca, for being here and for allowing us to really come into your home and to hear from you today. I want to start with a simple question, and that is just tell us about James.
Well, James is 8 years old, and when he was about a year, we started having some concerns, the way he was responding and some behavioral issues. And it was an ordeal that lasted, about 6 months or so of different being referred to. We thought maybe he had a problem hearing, and that led to a referral and various evaluations. And finally, at about 18 months, he was diagnosed with mild autism.
Now, life with autism has got to create some challenges for you as a family with your schedules, your social activities, trying to relate to other families and other parents. Can you speak to us a little bit about that?
One of the greatest challenges has been, we have two other daughters in addition to James, and just to be able to create a normal life, whatever that has meant. We've had to redefine normal for our family, which has been fun and exciting in some ways, but really challenging in some other ways.
You know, we've had, from the time he was 2, so the last 6 years or so, has probably been an average of 2 to 3, sometimes more, therapy sessions per day. Some in the home where, you have the stranger in your home every day, telling you how to raise your kid. And, we've needed that help and support, but it gets, it's a struggle.
It's also been hard to establish friendships with families who do not have children with disabilities because James's uniqueness. It challenges the ability to be able to just go and go to lunch after church one day, or go celebrate a friend's birthday, because we don't know how he's going to react.
Another thing that we deal with is, the ukulele and the stimming of just movie talk constantly, and sometimes we just wish he would be quiet.
Hi, I'm James Siebels. I'm your friendly neighborhood, I got bit by a spider. I always wanted to be awesome.
Could you just share with us a little bit about how the stress of trying to parent a son with autism has had upon your marriage?
It has put our marriage on the brink of disaster many times. And it's terrible because, marriage is hard enough. I mean, under the best circumstances, it's challenging and you have issues to work through. And then suddenly, in your face, every moment of every day is this gigantic issue that there's no right answers for. The best experts in the field, can't really tell you what you need to do about this, much less family, friends, and trying to agree on things, trying to, balance, how much do you spend on therapy? How much time do you devote to it? Which therapist you like? It has been an unbelievable strain on our marriage. It's taken an incredible amount of dedication to stick it out at times. And it's not because you don't love each other. It's because it's just so hard. And you're tired and frustrated. You're at a loss.
Tom and Blanca, share with us a little bit about your experience in trying to attend church and include James in church.
Nobody ever asked what my story was. You're the first person who has asked what our story has been.
There was a period of time at the church that we were dealt maybe the hardest blow of all through this whole journey. James had a lot of behavioral problems, disruptive behavior, particular biting, aggressive behavior, and we were doing everything we could to try to manage the behavior, and
we were even volunteering in his class to be his one-on-one.
We would even take turns attending the class with him and trying to shadow him around one-on-one to catch him. And I remember one time we showed up and the other volunteers weren't there, and we were there basically just because we were going to try to one-on-one shadow him, and the other volunteers didn't show up, and we wound up in charge of this class of 25 kids, and at one point there was an incident with a little girl, and he bit her before we could get to it, and we felt terrible. And but the next Saturday night after that incident, we were called by someone from the church and told not to bring him to church. And this person told us that there were about 10 families that had contacted them and said, if James is there, we're not going to bring our family anymore. And I don't know, man. That was about the low point of my journey. What do you do with that? You've already lost a lot of the dreams. You've already grieved the child you didn't have. You dream of the sports he's gonna play, the schools he's gonna go to, the girl he's gonna marry, all of that, and you've kind of given up all that already, and then you're just dreaming of being able to manage the behavior and function as a family, and you're assuming part of that's going to be your church life, and then you feel like that's being taken away from you. We were at a crisis, and it was like, what are we going to do? And I remember just saying, we got to keep going. We got to keep going to church, and I don't want to make people leave, but it's my church. And it's my son. Where we go, he goes.
I was a relatively new Christian. I didn't grow up in the church. I had been a Christian for about 10, 12 years when all this happened. But I was excited about God. I was excited about doing ministry for him. Part of what I thought our plan was going to be was to help out in a church, in some kind of ministry. And to all of a sudden have the church just not only close the door, but say, your child is not welcome here. It just kind of, your whole world just crumbled. And how do you get up from that? When part of your spiritual strength has come from the body of Christ. That was a huge one for me to be able to come to terms with. But God had a plan for all of this, and there's pain still, There's a little loneliness there that is never going to quite go away, I don't think.
If you're like me, hearing the Siebels' experience with their home church is, to say the least, disappointing. I mean, words like the lowest point of my journey, don't bring your child back, how do you get up from here? These are not words that we want to hear people saying after they leave our churches. Well, fortunately, that's not the only story. In this video, we're going to look at the Jaramillo family and their experience in their home church and see if it differs a little bit from what we saw with the Siebels family.
Thank you, Danny and Marisol, for allowing us to come into your home today. Danny, Marisol, just want to start off with asking you to just tell us a little bit about Megan herself, your daughter.
Megan was born with arthrogryposis, and basically there was not enough amnio fluid in the womb, and so her muscles were like contracted. Along with that, she has dislocated hips, so she has been wheelchair bound all her life, and she's very social. Mentally, she's capable of a lot. It's just physically, and then physically, she just needs a lot of help with transferring. Other than that, her arms are very, very strong.
Now she's 17 years old, and she's in a wheelchair, and it hasn't been easy.
Now, Marisol, you actually came into this family 3 or 4 years ago, I know. And so there had to be some challenges for you as you entered into a family that was already affected by disability.
For a minute there, I thought, we were alone, that, there was nobody who could identify with us. When I saw that the church had a support group for parents of disabled children, it was like a godsend, because everyone was very welcoming. We felt at home. We were at a discussion table, and they were discussing, being a parent of a disabled child and feeling the same feelings that I've been feeling. The challenges and I don't want to say discrimination, but the challenges that you have when you're out in public, and I felt, wow, I can't believe this. This is awesome. I love it. And thank God that we found that place, because I felt there was hope for our relationship.
Yeah, I'll never forget that day. It was just raining as hard, and we were running late, and the whole experience was just overwhelming to know that there was a place where we were accepted and our child was accepted, and it just meant a lot to us. I was really overwhelmed that it wasn't just about us. It wasn't just, we were along with other families that we felt welcomed. And I think, did we pray that? I think we prayed that at the end of that session of that parent meeting. And it was just overwhelming to know that their prayers were similar to many of mine that I've had in the past. And we felt really comforting, and it was a place that we knew that we were going to go back to. And it was a small seed that was planted, and now it's our home.
Now, I know you guys were recently married within the last couple of years, and that the ministry, the disability ministry at the church, which brought you closer to God and one another, had some impact in that. Tell us a little bit about that.
Being part of our church, it brought our relationship to a more, more intimate and a more spiritual place that it had never been before. And it was kind of exciting. It was kind of exciting to know that it wasn't just me, Marty, and Megan. It was me, Marty, and Megan, and God. And He was a part of our relationship. And I think in my mind, and I think I even shared with Marisol, that in order to have a future, or to be planned to get married, that we needed somebody. We needed God in our life.
Being involved in church and in that disability ministry, sharing with other families, and then that was our first step into church. After that, we said, we can't live without the church being in our lives and part of our lives. We felt very close, and we said, this is something that we have to have forever.
Can you tell me what it was like for Megan when she began to participate in the youth group?
The experiences of Megan being in the youth group, Megan had went to somebody's house. They had like a fellowship night, and I came to pick up Megan, and it was time to pick her up, and we were starting to head out the door, and one of the girls came up to me and she said, "Well, Megan wanted to ask you a question, but she was kind of nervous to ask you." And I'm like, "Well, what's the question?" And she said, "Well, we're having a sleepover, just some of the girls, and we'd like to know if she can come with us." And I'm like, "Well, you know what this entails. If she comes with you, is there going to be someone who's going to be able to help change her, help get her out of her wheelchair?" And they both looked at me, Megan and the little girl, and their eyes were just smiling like, "Yeah, we know what it entails. It's fine." And I never forgot how that felt, because they wanted her just the way she was. And there was no hesitation in them asking. And I don't know, it just touched me. I walked to the car and I told Marty what had happened, and I was in tears. Because there was somebody who accepted my daughter for who she was. And it just meant a lot to me. And when I dropped Megan off that day for the sleepover, she had a blast. And I was kind of beside myself. It was just overwhelmed, the love they had. And the acceptance for that moment was just beautiful.
Is there anything you'd like to say to a group of students that are watching this interview that maybe we haven't mentioned or hit upon when it comes to disability ministry in the church?
What I feel that's important, I guess, for us at church, and part of it's good and part of it's bad. I know that we're in church. I know that when we're fellowshipping with our friends and other families and other kids that are special needs, it's a beautiful experience. And I know that there's a place where we're accepted. But I guess the downside to that is that when we're at school, when we're out in the community, when we're out with family, when we're out at the mall, it's not the same. Because not everybody shares that spirit of God's love and acceptance. And sometimes it's disheartening to know that we're not going to be at church the rest of the week. And to know that there'll be places where my daughter's not going to be accepted. And it's hard. So for what church brings, it's outside of church, it's a cold world. And it's very hard for me to, as a parent, to know that that's what my daughter has to go up against. I know with God she can do anything. I know with God's love she can be strong. And I know as far as we're involved in church, I know that's a safe place for Megan.
God bless the people who have it in their heart to work at church or to minister to the disabled community, because there are people that, like us or like me, that had no hope, but thank God that there were people open to minister to the disabled community, to give us comfort and hope for the future. And it's amazing the people that are interested in working with the disabled. I think they're very special human beings that have it in their heart to do that, and I'm so grateful.
Danny Marisol, I want to thank you so much for opening up your home and your lives to us, sharing with us what it was like for you to participate and to be welcomed into a church with a disability ministry and how that's impacted your life and your family. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks.
Well, what a contrast we have between families. Let me ask you, which church would you like to belong to? In case your leader did not indicate, it just so happens that the Siebels family and the Jaramillos family belong to the same church. That's right, the same church. It just so happens that the experience of the Siebels family was prior to the beginning of a disability ministry in that church. And the experience of the Jaramillo family was after a disability ministry had been established in that church. Do you see the change that can happen in the culture of a church when a church begins to understand the biblical mandate of disability ministry? Well, I'm sure you want your church to be just like the church that the Jaramillos experienced. Now, many of you are asking, what's the rest of the story of the Siebels family? So this video is going to capture their testimony as transformation began to happen in their church and it began to become a disability-friendly church. So watch and enjoy.
Paul tells us in Corinthians that we are to comfort those who are mourning or who are being challenged or suffering with the same comfort we've received from God. But it doesn't seem in your experience that you received that identification, that comfort from the church. Tell us a little bit about how that felt.
I think that it would be appropriate when one is grieving the way we were to just be able to say, we love you. We don't know what to do about this, but you're not alone.
And I remember at one point we were talking and I just remember it was like God speaking to me, and we finally made a commitment that that we were going to stick it out. And I remember looking at my wife and saying, I don't understand it, but I just sense that somebody's going to be blessed by how we handle this situation.
But I know at some point the tide turned a little bit. There was a shift in the culture of the church. The church began to reach out to your family, and volunteers began to come and alongside you and your son, and eventually a disability ministry was birthed in your church, and you guys and your family was a part of that. Can you share a little bit about the blessings that began to happen and the change that began to happen?
When the tide began to kind of change a little bit and there were signs of hope, people stepped forward we didn't even know before that just responded to the need. And the kindness of these people that were really strangers to us, that just all of a sudden were like these angels that God sent, and they embraced our son and faithfully came and shadowed him around and allowed him to be part of the class and took the pressure off of us so that we could actually sit in church and hear a little bit of the sermon without necessarily just worrying about, oh God, I hope it's not another one of those days. The support group meetings, even just as a couple, the volunteers watch the children. And even just as a couple, to have a couple hours without the kids. So to hear some of the other moms and dads share from the heart, a lot of the pretension is gone. Once you have a special needs kid, you get less pretentious because you can't hide and pretend you're perfect anymore. It's right there. There's just a spiritual depth that's profound that it's just, when you walk away from something like that, that God has been there with you. To see, maybe a couple dozen families there and a couple dozen special needs children running around, and to see those parents look like they belong, look like they're having fun, and look like for just those few moments they're not worried about their kids, they're not worried about what anyone's thinking. I think those moments have been the most powerful for me as a parent, to see those other parents and just say, yeah, you're okay here.
You're safe.
You're safe here.
God has been very good to us. We've known some pain. We really have known pain. But to be able to experience God's blessing in the church, that's from Him, you know. So you know that the pain is worth going through, is worth experiencing, because it's something. It's about someone greater, and it's about a purpose greater than my dream for my child. It's about God's dream for His children. And He has chosen James to be a part of that. And that consoles me. That encourages me. That gives me hope.
Is there anything from your heart you'd like to share to a classroom full of students who are studying disability ministry as they go out and either continue in the ministry they're involved in or look at maybe starting a ministry in their church?
The first thing I think is, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of our families. Don't be afraid of the kids. Don't be afraid of the adults who might be, they're still people, and they still need the love. They still need the support. They still need to be heard. And then the other thing would be, take one family at a time, you know. We live in a society, and even the church has suffered from this, that we just want to grow things so quickly. So it's all about the numbers. And I think that, especially within disability ministry, you have the opportunity to really touch the life and the hearts of a family who is wanting to just be understood and heard.
Thank you again, Tom and Blanca, for allowing us to come in and to your lives and to your home today and hear from you. God bless you.